Hey there, hi, hello. Ever since my first video, where I showed how to make these functional gravity block entity slab stairs, I've been thinking a lot about other ways you can use the falling block entities, and that's what I'm going to be showcasing in this video. I have a lot of things set up to show you, so let's get on with it. So the whole idea here is, once you have a falling block entity floating above a stone wall or a fence, you can manipulate it into interesting positions, and basically we're just going to be doing some interesting builds using falling block entities while keeping them as entities, not necessarily blocks. And by doing this you can basically get full blocks that are off the grid of Minecraft. Quick disclaimer, on some servers, and I've seen this on 2 so far, they'll have a plugin where basically the falling block entity will snap to the stone wall so that they don't have entities accumulating. So the whole idea is to bring a falling block entity into the game by letting it float above a stone wall like this, and then we can position it in interesting ways off the grid like this. Now if we get rid of the iron bar and the wall, we can drop it down into a position that is unusual, and there are some interesting things that we can do with this. The next big idea is, how do we get this falling block entity to exist exactly half into a block? And it's a little bit hard with a lot of the hitboxes that exist in the game. For instance, you'd think maybe you'd just rub it up against this stair and it'll be happy, but the problem is there is going to be a center to the falling block entity, and this is something you may or may not know, but falling block entities are actually slightly smaller than a whole block. So when you push it exactly half a block onto the stair, the very center of the entity is going to be registered as being in the same block as the stair, and the game is going to basically say, no, that's not allowed. There is, however, a tricky way to get around this, and that is to basically have the falling block entity's center aligned separate from where the stair block is, but still having the hitbox of the falling entity resting in the place of the stair. So we're going to push it up against this chest, and we'll see, because of the hitbox of the chest, the falling entity is actually 1 pixel over this row of blocks. So I'm going to go ahead and push it, and you see now it's resting perfectly halfway into the block where the step is. And then, since it's kind of weirdly aligned, I'm just going to go ahead and do that again, and we have a falling block entity that is exactly in the middle of 4 blocks. Because other entities and players will not be stopped by the falling block entity, there are some interesting applications for how you can put that to use. For instance, over here, I have a hidden doorway that I can just pass through like this. In this case, because it is very obvious that something weird is going on this side, is why I put over on this side some similar blocks as a concrete powder to basically mask it. But if you want, you can just leave it like this and it'll look pretty cool. And since I think this is a neat application, I'm going to show you how to do it, how I basically did over there for the half block entities. So first of all, the easy step is laying down the first concrete powder, like that. To get the entities resting at head level, I'm basically going to use 2 on the half blocks with the stairs. So like I showed before, we're just going to go ahead and have it up against the chest, and then it's on the stair, and then you shove it into place like that. And I'm going to go ahead and replace the stair so we can do the other side exactly the same way. You got your entity, get it next to the chest, get it next to the stair, drop it into place, and then I'm going to drop those stairs on top, and there you go. It's a hidden doorway already. Just going to lay down some slabs to make it look nice. Gonna need to take out the wall on the other side. And look at that. Totally hidden. Now you can push a slab into the top right there, but you can't place it right now because there are entities in the space, so the game will not let you place a block there. But as long as you push it in and it doesn't end up down here, then the entities will be just fine. The next application I'm looking at is to basically use the falling block entity in a wall, just like this. We have it up against the iron bar, so it's almost flush with the stairs here, but of course if you really want it to be aligned perfectly, we can do the half block trick like I showed before. I'm going to go ahead and knock that iron bar out and drop that into place, and basically there's a vertical half slab indented into the wall. And what I like to do with this is what I have set up over here. It gets a little dark if you start placing blocks behind, but it's a hidden item dispenser. So basically I just did an item dispenser like this out of this dispenser, and then that button goes to the slime block and that will push the items out through the entity for you to grab. So just a little aesthetic thing that I put together, an idea for decoration that I will probably be using in the future. Earlier in the video I talked about that lengthy process to get a falling block entity exactly on a half block, but it turns out there's an easier way to do that, and that's with a shulker box, because it pushes out exactly a half block. Now I bothered to show the other way because I realize that shulker boxes are an endgame thing and you might want to start building with this before you have access to them. Now once you do have shulker boxes, it makes building with the falling block entities a lot easier, but there's an important thing you need to know. Even though the falling block entity is smaller than a normal block, the center of the entity is actually going to be in the far block of where it's pushed. So for instance, I can place a string here, and this falling entity is absolutely fine. It doesn't register that string at all. Now, if you place it over here, the entity pops off. So for whatever reason, I don't understand why, but when you get the falling entity pushed with the shulker box, it will end up in the far side. And when you're using the shulker boxes to do this tricky trick, you need to make sure that whatever you're doing will be able to last the test of time and not pop off. So here we have the other direction. Open it all the way, and if I place a string here, it's fine. If I place a string there, no good. My first instinct when I learned this trick was to see if it was at all possible to make a proper Minecraft stair shape using the concrete powder or any falling block entity in this shape, basically using the same boat trick as I did for the slab stairs. And this is as far as I could get. It works, but unfortunately I can't expand it any further just because of the amount of stuff that's going on underneath. For one thing, these actual concrete powder blocks that are not entities are, they shouldn't be there right now. They're held up by nothing, and if I update them, they're gonna fall. Yeah, so this is not a really good design, so if anyone can actually come up with how to make proper Minecraft stairs with the falling block entities, please show me how. Using that shulker box trick makes building with the falling block entities much more convenient, and I think it makes it a lot easier to do interesting things with them. Here's an example of just a pillar with some concrete powder entities, and I think that would look really cool at the corner of a building. For these entities in particular, the center of the entity is currently in this block right here. So if I just drop more concrete powder into there, they're all going to still be just fine. And you can get some interesting looking areas like this, or forget the slabs, just over here like this. So there's basically a lot of things that you can do with this once you learn how to manipulate the concrete powder or any falling block entities. So the fun thing is, we're basically now building with vertical half slabs once we can get these falling block entities on a half block. So right here, there's actually just open space behind them, but it looks interesting. It's not something that you're used to seeing in Minecraft. Now there's an interesting application for that type of layout, and so over here, basically what I built is a one-way window. So you can see through on this side if you step into the entity, but there's no way to step into the entity from this side, so think of this like a interrogation room. You can look in from the outside, but you can't see through this window. There are lots of ways to use this for decoration. Right here ahead of me, that's my kind of tag, the VII, the Roman numeral 7. And I think something that's important to realize is, even though you'd seem that these entities would all fall into the same space, they don't have to if you do them one at a time. This entity is resting upon this block, and it was placed in first. And then I dropped this normal concrete into place on top of that entity, and so that lets me put another entity onto the second row. And you can basically build up like that, however you want to design something. If you want an actual hitbox in the vertical half slab, you can basically use the same trick that I used for the falling block entity slab stair trick, which is to basically use a boat on soul sand that will come through the wall, and so you see this armor stand is resting on it right there. Revisiting the hidden entryway that I showed earlier, I realized with the ease of use of using the shulker boxes, you could actually make it a 4-directional gateway. And so what I have right here is exactly that. You could hide it a little bit better with the magenta concrete that I have, but basically, if I walk into the center here, I can walk through to the other side, but wait, there's another side over here, and another side over here. So the way that I've done this is with another boat trick to keep the player walking through at the normal block height. So what we have here is what we have at the very center of that gateway. If we have two boats stacked on top of each other over soul sand, you're able to walk over it without noticing at all. And the soul sand is important. You can also do it with a full block of snow or a chest, but if you don't, basically what you're going to have is that little bump in your step as you step onto it. Over here is a setup to allow you to make this for yourself. You don't need to do all the shulker boxes at once if you don't have this many, but just for the ease of showing how to do this, you're basically going to start with the first level of concrete powder, and you're going to push it into place one at a time. These boats down here, and so I place these on top of soul sand, and then I place the sandstone here downwards with pistons. There, now the first level is in place. You can walk through as normal. Now up top what you'll have is the falling block entities resting with just a quarter on another block, but the quarter that has the center of the entity will be in the middle, so that it doesn't break and pop off. So once you have the falling block entity aligned, break the fence and drop it into place. Now with the second row in place, you can just go ahead and finish off these corner pillars with normal falling blocks, and if you want your corners to not be falling blocks, then you can just push down any movable block vertically into that space with pistons. So now let's clean up. You can get rid of all this because I'm in creative mode, and voila. You're left with just the gate as I showed before, able to walk through, have 4 directions. I imagine this would be really cool if you had, for instance, a secret bunker with a bunch of tunnels and a bunch of these so you can go any which direction and people will lose your scent. B000100. Yeah, that's just kind of a neat thing that I put together. I think it's pretty cool. Very last tip that I wanted to point out here is if you want to do this vertical half slab in some other blocks, or doesn't even have to be a perfect half slab, but basically what you will end up having if you have the part that's covered up in other blocks is this texture flickering, and you can avoid having that happen by basically pushing the entity into a wall with a piston. So that's what I've done here, and you can see just the tiniest little sliver of a block, an entity on this side, and that will keep this to never flicker. On the opposite side, the same exact little sliver over here, but instead the texture is inside the blocks, and so you get the actual block texture right here. So basically how you do that, once the falling block entity is in place, go ahead and position it how you want it. In this case, I'm going to have it just a half slab over, and then I'm going to go ahead and power the piston, You can see the entity move just ever so slightly. So now I'm going to go ahead and drop in a new block and get rid of that. You can see the result over here is exactly as it is right here. And lastly, I'm sure there are plenty of people out there who will ask the question, can I use this to make traps? And the answer is yes. Yes, you can. I like to call this falling block entity quicksand. Anyway, that's it from me. I hope you enjoyed this idea, and I want to hear all the ideas that this gives you. If you have any ideas for me or questions about how this works, please comment below, leave a like if you enjoyed, and subscribe for more weekly Minecraft videos. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.